Logarithmic and exponential functions are inverses of each other. For an exponential function, f of x equals b to the x, f inverse of x equals log base b of x. Do notice, inverse, you show it by putting a -1 exponent on the function. So this is on the part of the function, okay, left side. For logarithmic function, g of x equals log base b of x. G inverse of x equals b to the x. So in words, g of x equals log base b of x, and f of x equals b to the x are inverses of each other, so inverse functions of each other. So logs and exponentials are inverse functions of each other. Examples: find the inverse functions of a, f of x equals 6 to the x, and b, g of x equals log base 12 of x. So let's realize, for instance, this is just as an example, okay? F of x equals 3x plus 4. This is a linear format. Be aware of that. I'm just showing it for reference. If I have a linear equation, keep in mind we usually call them y equals, and for instance, 3x plus 4 as a reference. So do notice, I'm just changing it so that it makes it easier for you to visualize. Okay, so y equals 3x plus 4. We used to say f of x. Well, we're now saying f of x, but we used to say something like y equals 3x plus 4. In this case, we would have to solve, right? To make it a inverse function. We solve for x, basically. So let's get rid of the 6, minus 6 from both sides. So we have y minus 6 equals 3x. And now let's divide by 3 to get rid of the 3, agreed? And we want to do it individually. Hence the reason why I changed the 4 into a 6, to make it easier to visualize. Don't want to have too many fractions in there to make it look more complex. But rather, it's still the same idea, the same concept. Be aware of that. Okay, so notice that the 3's cancel out on the right side. That leaves us with just the x. On the left side, y divided by 3, well, there's still 3 there, agreed? So y over 3. Minus 2, because we had 6 divided by 3 gave us 2. Hence the reason why I chose to change it into a 6, to make it easier to visualize. So that's it. This is our inverse function technically. X equals y over 3 minus 2. Or you can call it 1/3 y minus 2 if you want to. But in reality, there we go, just changing it to inverse function format by putting a negative. So f inverse of x, so this is the inverse of what we have originally. Okay, there it is, f inverse of x. And once again, y over 3 minus 2 is the answer. So the inverse function from y equals 3x plus 6 is y over 3 minus 2. This is the inverse function. Be aware, it's not quite completely of the 4, right? Because that one has a 4, so be aware of that. So do remember though, we call them inverses by writing a -1. So log base b of a equals k, and b to the k equals a. These are the logarithmic and exponential equations that you can use to convert back and forth between them. Keep in mind, they're inverse functions of each other. So that's how come they work. They're technically, we can say, opposites. So, but do remember, not quite the same. So inverse functions. So a, we have f of x equals 6 to the x, which we can now convert into an inverse function by writing a -1. So f inverse of x equals log base 6 of x, right? Keep in mind, the only difference is the base. So we're kind of taking the shortcut. We're not going through the long route like what we did with the linear equation for solving. It takes a little more effort in this case, especially for some equations that are longer. This one's probably fairly straightforward, but we still want to keep it in the same technical, straightforward format to make it easier for this case. So once again, g of x equals log base 12 of x, and converting it to the inverse function, g of x equals, we have 12 to the power of x, right? So g inverse, let's not forget the -1, that's what implies that it's an inverse. So g inverse of x equals 12. And there is technically our solution. Just one more thing, let me go back and change this into a 6 rather than a 4, agreed? So there it is, now our answer is complete. It has become the inverse function. So our top example, f of x equals 3x plus 6. Inverse function format of it is f inverse of x equals y over 3 minus 2. And notice the process that it took to convert it into an inverse function. Be aware, once again, we're not doing quite that much work for this case scenario since we're trying to just keep it basic. You get to learn it in higher level classes. Be aware of that, okay? So in this case, we're just trying to do the basics of how to change it from a regular function into an inverse function.